欢迎大家来到索菲亚大学咨询心理学双语硕士说明会。那很高兴今天能和大家一起探讨这一富有深度和意义的学科。那首先呢，我们要向大家传达一个小小的变动。原本应与我们一同参加的 Adam Neal 教授由于流感不幸缺席，但我们依然很幸运的有项目主席 Jennifer Crane 和 Michelle Daly 教授在这里。那今天的说明会呢，将帮助大家更深入地了解咨询心理学硕士项目，包括课程结构、项目亮点，以及它将如何帮助你们成长为专业的心理咨询师。我们还特别安排了问答环节，希望能够解答大家最关心的问题。那特别提醒大家，本次说明会全程提供同声传译功能，同学们呢可以进入中文频道听中文讲解。当然，我们也鼓励大家积极参与，与教授们进行互动，利用这个机会直接向他们提问。那现在请大家放松心情，积极参与，希望这一次说明会能为你们带来清晰的方向和有价值的收获。现在让我们欢迎 Michelle Daly 教授开启今天的说明会。Michelle。
大家好. We're going to begin with just a little moment together. And I invite us to just take a moment to feel what's present inside. We can take a moment to tune into our hearts. If you'd like to, you can place a hand on your heart, maybe a hand on your belly, and just feel your heart space. And maybe listen for a moment if there might be a question or an emotion or a thought or simply something happening in your body that wants your attention. Maybe there's an intention you have for tonight, something you'd like to learn, something you'd like to share. And as we join together in this heart space, tuning into what might be under the words, just take a moment to notice your breath. And let's take a few deep breaths together. One more. And if there's an idea or a word or a question that comes to your heart, maybe you can jot it down if you'd like, write it down, or just make a note, a mental note, or feel into it in whatever way works for you. And you can hold that and share with us at a later time if you'd like. I'll hand it over to Jennifer Crane.
Hi, ni hao, everybody. I noticed, Michelle, in your meditation that I am so excited. My heart is beating. I think I'm a little nervous too because I want this to go really well, but definitely excited. So welcome, everybody. And I just want to say, before we launch into throwing a lot your way, I just wanted to say that Dr. Adam Neal couldn't be with us tonight. He is under the weather. So as part of my meditation, I also sent him out heart energy and feeling better vibes. So it's just the two of us tonight, and we're going to persist forward. All right, so I just want to formally introduce myself. I'm Professor Jennifer Crane, as I said, but I prefer to go by Jen. And I am both the Master's in Counseling Psychology Domestic Chair and now the Master's in Counseling Psychology China Program Chair. So I also have a part-time virtual practice in addition to my program chair jobs, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I started seeing clients in 2002, and that was 23 years ago. I have to kind of pause for a second when I say that. I can't believe it's been that long. I've been licensed for about 15 years, and I've been teaching since 2006 in counseling psychology, and I also taught at junior college level, which is the bachelor's level as well. I also serve as president of the board of directors at the Process Therapy Institute. This is an institute I did a lot of my pre-licensed training and field work at, and I learned so much about what therapeutic presence is and how it's just as important as a tool or intervention technique that we would use in psychotherapy and counseling. So, and that is something that is firmly embedded into the development of this Master's in Counseling Psychology China program. I take great pride in my roles as a faculty member, a program chair, a mentor, a student advisor, and I deeply value the cultivation of this program that we've put together and to offer it to you in Mandarin and in China to support your academic and professional growth as counseling students. And indirectly, I feel like being a part of how you are going to go forward and help your communities and improve in the matters of mental health. And turn it back to you, Michelle, so people can hear how great you are.
Thank you, Jen. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here. I'm really, really happy. And also my heart is filled with joy to be here to meet you all and to be able to share a little about Sophia University and also hear back from you about what you'd like to learn. A little about myself. I am a professor at a core faculty member as a professor at Sophia. I've been teaching at Sophia for many years, and I teach a variety of courses, including trauma and crisis, counseling principles and practice, theories, child and adolescent therapy, and more. I was trained as an art therapist and a somatic therapist with focuses on transformation and healing. I also have a background in mathematics and public health, environmental health in particular, and I love nature. I love being outdoors. I also love research, and I completed my doctorate a few years ago and studied heart-space connections. So you might hear me returning back to the heart, and a lot of my research interests revolve around psychophysiology, heart-based connections, biofields, so the energy, the electromagnetic fields that we connect by, and just sort of the mysteries of how we connect in the therapeutic space in particular. Also, self-care and self-compassion and self-empathy are real interests of mine as therapists in particular. So I too am a licensed therapist and a registered art therapist in private practice, and use a lot of creative ways to engage with healing. And with a lot of clients who have experienced trauma, grief. I work with all ages across the lifespan, from infants to death and dying. And I'm really interested in groups and systems perspectives. And we bring all that into our unique program at Sophia University. And I feel so grateful to be part of this community and be able to share more with you.
Great. All right, so we're going to start with the program overview, and Michelle and I are going to kind of take turns telling you so you don't get tired of hearing just one of us speak for a long time. And if you're thinking of questions you might have about anything we say, you can put those in the chat. You can hold on to those, and we're going to have a Q&A part at the end of our presentation. So I imagine that you are here today because you might already be a counselor or a psychologist in your country, or you are interested in the professional path and what it takes to become a counselor. And the Master's in Counseling Psychology program at Sophia University has been created because of the demand for it from our partners and who are working directly with you and our prospective students. And out of that, we created an opportunity for students in China to learn the art and science of becoming a mental health provider. One of the things that makes Sophia unique is, and one of the reasons you may be interested in our program is, over other programs, we consider the whole person as part of the educational experience. And in that, we explore the capacity for growth and transformation all along the way during the program as you are learning counseling tools, skills, and professional competencies, right? Whole person learning is about learning mentally, emotionally, socially, academically, creatively, personally, and professionally. So after completing the, I'm going to abbreviate to the MCPC degree from now on, ideally we want you as graduates to move forward in your career in confidence at identifying and assessing the full spectrum of clinical issues that your clients may present to you, and competencies in diagnosis, understanding ethical issues, identifying diversity factors, and as you conceptualize going out into your communities and being treatment providers. All right, Michelle, I'm going to hand it back to you there.
Great, Jen. So the program overview I'm going to share with you. Sophia University engages students, as Jen mentioned, through intellectual, personal, emotional, and creative work to ensure an educational experience that is as personally meaningful as it is professionally and academically rigorous. In this program, students will commit to a journey of psychological exploration, assimilating clinical theory and skills to support clients while also equally practicing critical self-reflection to support greater self-awareness and personal growth. So this is sort of the growth and transformation piece we're speaking to. And I'd like to propose a few questions that we can answer later, or maybe you can reflect on what does this mean to you? What is transpersonal psychology? Do you have an idea of that? Have you already studied this? Do you have questions about it? Another question, why is emotional and social development so important in this field? And why is personal growth important to a developing or existing clinician? So I might speak to that just briefly here. I, for a moment earlier, spoke about self-care, self-compassion, self-expression. And I find that in this role, in this therapeutic role, as we develop to become a therapist, and for me, a lifelong opportunity to be a therapist, best practice is that we can know ourselves, sort of like I invited us into that heart space, into the self-reflection, into the inner world. How are we showing up? And what is present here? So I'll leave these questions that we can loop back to. And I'm wondering if we lost Jen or if Jen is here. And
I'm here.
oh, there you are. Okay, great. Just making sure. I kept talking because I thought, oh, okay, yep. Thank you.
And I was quiet because you kept talking.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about like what we want you to get out of this program. All right, so we want you to have a foundational clinical education reflecting multiple realms of competency, right, including practical skills as the therapist, how to be a therapist, right? How do we sit in the room with another person when there's a power differential? How do we hold therapeutic presence? How do we employ ethical guidelines about this field? And then we use the skills and tools that we learn as clinical competencies. And how do we approach diversity matters and evidence-based practices? So that's all a part of what you'll get in this program, right? We want engagement and practice with, a diverse range of clinical and transpersonal theories. And just to name a few of those, like we still teach systems theories. This is something that was birthed in our field here in the United States like 50, 60 years ago. And it's still the foundation for who we are and how we practice as psychotherapists. And that includes structural, strategic, multi-generational, and experiential theories. There's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, inner family systems, which is kind of a newer hot therapeutic modality right now. And I know Michelle probably knows a little bit more about it than I do, but we'll definitely be covering those types of theories. We do a lot of looking at some of the roots of our field in a psychodynamic way, right? Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung are considered some of the father of psychology and therapy. I believe that's how we refer to Freud. And Carl Jung is the father of transpersonal psychology. And if you know anything about their story, they used to collaborate and then they had a break because Carl Jung thought there was something way beyond the ego than just stopping and developing at the age of 6 years old. And so this is sort of where we pick up there in our program with some of the concepts of transpersonal psychology and teach you, we are more than just our two-dimensional experience. We are three-dimensional beings taking in information from all different ways. And sometimes that can overwhelm us. Sometimes that can flood us. Sometimes that creates clinical issues, right? So we all talk about somatic psychology and creative expressive interventions. And we do things like sand tray and process painting techniques. So students will get a chance to explore program coursework through experiential activities, and these are meant to bring the material alive, right? To support a strength-based, whole person, creative approach to counseling. And it's one of the reasons I was very drawn to whole person learning, right? I can hear things, I can read things, I can write things, but it just wasn't quite enough for my brain, which I needed to sort of try it on and see it and bring to life in Technicolor. So that's what we hope to do for you here in this program as well. And students will be developing a professional identity as a practicing mental health provider through personal reflection and interpersonal exchange during classroom discussions in both our synchronous or asynchronous format. Synchronous is when we have a meeting in real time where everybody's together. Asynchronous are things that are happening online in a discussion forum, or you're turning in assignments outside of having to formally meet at the same time. And this is not a program where students can hide out and defer to the expertise of the professors, right? And we will bring a lot of expertise, but we also bring a collaborative spirit, right? We want to know who you are and how you identify and how you relate to the material and how you react and respond to it. That's such an important part of developing and becoming a clinician and knowing sort of what gets in your way and what strengths you bring and sort of how to work with those as you're building your clinical skills along the way during the program. We have very supportive classroom environments facilitated by dedicated professors. 2 are in this room right now. And we have very extensive and intricate clinical experience. And I want to emphasize the support you will get as a budding clinician in our program. This is a hard job. I meet people a lot, and when they ask me what I do and I tell them I'm a psychotherapist, they typically go, "Whoa, how do you do that?" And my response is typically like, I'm not completely sure, but it seems to work pretty well at this point. I'm 23 years in, so I'm going to continue with it, right? So you're sitting with other people's emotions and their traumas and their losses. And no matter where you live in the world and how you were raised in your family, many of us did not get the tools and the skills and the resources that we needed to be fully emotionally intelligent as adults. It's just kind of a fact. If our parents didn't know how to do it and didn't teach us, if our communities didn't know how to do that and teach us, we're kind of out there as adults figuring this out as we go along. And that can lead to a lot of people suffering from depression and anxiety. And I know suicidality has gone up quite a bit in our country, and I know your country. So, our faculty has a dual role in supporting you as budding clinicians, as well as what it's like to be an expert role as a clinician, right? You're going to be managing your own personal psychological material as you're becoming and developing at the same time. That is a skill. And that is something we take pride in as part of whole person learning. It's part of the rigor of our program, right? And instruction is essential for in our clinical content areas, including assessment and diagnosis. We're going to teach about clinical documentation, trauma and crisis, addiction, career development, anxiety, depression, and as I mentioned earlier, we can't talk about those things without talking about suicidality. And there's a wide scope of content that we do cover in this program, and sort of teaching you how to sit with your clients when they may be going through the worst things they've ever experienced in their life, right? And forming an identity of, how you work with that and how you let go of that at the end of the day, even that self-care piece that Michelle said, it's a real art to learning how to become a therapist in a full capacity way. 1 hour I might have like a very depressed housewife who's contemplating leaving her marriage. And then the next hour, I might have a client who's just wanting to talk about their job and working towards a promotion and wants to, run some ideas by me of how they might get a promotion, and after that, I have a young adult who's super anxious and has no friends and no aspirations and just stays in their room all day. Really, like that's really what my day looks like tomorrow outside of my Sophia job. So we're really learning how to pivot and switch and be skilled enough to return to our professional vessels for each new session. And no matter how many we have in a day, and reset our therapeutic presence, right? And sometimes we may only have like 5 minutes to do that. And maybe have a bite to eat and take a bio break as well. So this program will offer you a myriad of opportunities for deep self-reflection in mind, body, and soul-searching ways, and you'll be able to cultivate your self-expression through written and verbal and somatic and creative and nonverbal activities, all while developing your professional toolbox. And clients get to show up. This is something I really want my students to know, right? Clients get to show up however they are, right? They get to do anything. Whereas therapists, we have to maintain our professional boundaries, our ethics, our professional stances, and we have to stay out of our own way so we can really be present for the client. That's why we have to go to school for as long as we do. And that's why we have to get so many hours. I know here in our state of California, we have to get 3,000 hours sitting with clients under supervision before we can sit for the licensing exams. So they really want to make sure that we've, worked out a lot of our stuff before we sit with clients. All right, Michelle, I'm going to hand it back to you for some of the program learning outcomes.
Great. So the program learning outcomes, I would say, and following up on what you had shared, Jen, really part of the outcomes would be you learning about your students learning about themselves, right? So it's really a self-exploration, self-discovery in order to be more fully present with someone else. So in this program, we really ask you to take that responsibility and accountability, and also the opportunity to tune into your potential. I'm going to bring us back to that heart space. I think the heart doesn't lie, just like the art doesn't lie. As an art therapist, we can create, and there's a bit of a truth that comes out that maybe our head can't come up with. So really exploring the multidimensionality and the potential of who you are to become more of who you are. I think that's one of the major learning outcomes that might not be technically written in a handbook, but I wanted to start with that just as an invitation. And here are other ways probably to say that. So part of the program learning outcomes for the MCPC is to summarize, compare, and evaluate a broad range of theories, perspectives, methods, and research findings, including those of systems theory and transpersonal psychology used in the field of counseling psychology. I think I saw a question in the chat as you were talking, Jen, and which theories do we cover? We cover a broad range of theories. And so we can loop back to that question if you have more you want to ask about that. But we study the broad range and how that applies. So, and how we apply the counseling psychology theories, perspectives, methods, and research findings to important human problems and case examples. So we make it real, it's practical. We communicate, another outcome is to communicate and collaborate effectively as a mental health provider, integrating a transpersonal stance into potential service within a variety of mental health settings and with a diverse set of clients and colleagues. And this is a broad range, right? So there are a lot of people out there who are seeking mental health services, and there are a lot of different settings. So it will look different for each one of us on our path. Also reflecting upon your own whole person, the student's whole person development, including growth in mind, body, self-development, creativity, and community, and identifying opportunities for continuing personal and professional development. As I mentioned before, it's a bit of a lifelong journey here in terms of this personal growth and development and professional growth and development, and receiving support. As Jen mentioned, in this program, we professors and you'll have advisors that support you through the program. And my personal belief is that in order to support clients or to support students, we also need to receive that support. So there's a cycle here. There's a reciprocal exchange and a community that really helps support the learning process and the profession along the way after graduation. Apply the ethical and professional values of a mental health provider across mental health settings and interactions. So to Jen's point about the ethics, our ethics and professional values are really considered as students and as faculty, I would say. I think we hold ourselves accountable and look at our own values and ethics and have conversations around that. And as students, you'll be invited to also explore that realm.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Michelle. Just a little bit more about our faculty. The faculty are experts in their fields, and there'll be a combination of English or Mandarin or bilingual speaking clinicians or counselors teaching throughout this program, right? And probably what determines what teacher will teach what class is their content expertise. Our faculty is dedicated to making your experience as a student inclusive, personal, and collaborative, right? We do have professional expertise, yet we are humans living a full human experience. And we bring that to our work as well, because it's so critical to build therapeutic trust with your clients, right? You can sit and you can throw interventions, you can talk theory with your clients, but if you as a person cannot develop rapport and build trust with your clients, therapy is really not going to work very well at all, right? So this is something we do a little differently in our program, as we look at the whole person experience to see how that fits into becoming a clinician. And we also have so many giants in the field at Sophia doing incredible research and psychotherapy and teaching simultaneously, right? And as students in our program, you'll have the added benefit of getting to know our professors, the scholars, and beyond that, you'll get to know them more beyond what they've just contributed to the field of transpersonal psychology. And as for you being a student, right, and we can't emphasize, we realize we say this a lot during this presentation, but it's so important, right? You need to be prepared to bring your whole self to the program. Many of the assignments are tiered in a way where we want to know your reaction or your responses to the material, in addition to learning how to apply the content in a clinical capacity with clients, right? You'll be participating in discussions and group projects and presentations, and sometimes even taking turns teaching some of the concepts to each other and then presenting it to everybody. You'll be doing case conceptualizations and treatment plans, and practicing the theory and bringing it to life in this way, right? And all the while in these assignments, you'll be becoming growing, learning, and collaborating with your fellow peers and students and your professors. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the practical details of this program, okay? This is a 2-year Master's of Art in, it's a Master's of Art in Counseling Psychology, right? Where we integrate Western clinical theory and current approaches to individuals, couples, groups, kids and adolescents, and family therapy, right? The curriculum is, it's 2 years. It's a full-time educational experience that instills clinical competence in the counseling profession while supporting your personal growth and development. And there's so much potential for transformation in this program for you as a person and as you move into this profession. The first quarter introduces students to systemic theory. It's a foundational approach to serving any client in the context of, your upbringing and community, as well as providing a rich introduction to the transpersonal stance of honoring an expansive, multidimensional range of the human experience. And following this foundation, students will engage with psychological theories. We're going to specifically spell out the theories when we get to the Q&A. I know we've talked about some of them, but we will return to that. We're looking also at human development, right? And through birth, through elderhood, and what are the implications of personal development throughout one's lifetime, right? This is very specific to your families, your communities, your culture, right? Your region, your demographic, right? It looks very different over there in your part of the world than it does here in the Western world. And we're going to be, collaborating and talking about these things and how some of these issues can get in our way and keep us from our full potential. And maybe even become a crisis, a developmental crisis at some point in someone's life. You as a therapist might be helping people through their development and identity crises. So moving into clinical applications, students are going to begin to learn the practice and individual of group counseling skills, accounting for ethical considerations, and exploring assessment of client experience based on diagnostic criteria and mental distress and disorders, right? So we're going to really look at the diagnostic statistical manual of mental illness, which is, very much what we use in this field. It's sort of the gold standard of what the diagnoses are and what the symptoms are that go into the diagnosis and when we would give somebody a label of a diagnosis. Students are going to learn how to engage in research and connect with current mental health trends. And then you're going to be doing a lot of scholarly writing, right? There's going to be case note writing. There's going to be discussion forum, more informal writing. There'll be personal response writing. And then you will get a chance to practice scholarly writing as well. So at the end of this program, you're going to be a very well-rounded person in all the ways that you might have to use writing skills in your profession. And then we're also going to look at psychological assessment tools and testing, right? There's some formal measures. There's some standards in this country that we use. You're going to understand the difference between them and sort of how they're developed and what you would select an assessment tool for and why. And to complete this program and kind of rolling all of your personal and professional growth together, we're creating a capstone project, right? So some of you may be thinking, what is a capstone project, right? Well, in an overview, it's a final sort of comprehensive project that students complete at the end of an academic program, right? It's designed to showcase your knowledge, your skills, and your research abilities by integrating what you've learned all throughout the program. And for this particular, for the MCPC, we're going to have a few different options for you to complete your capstone. And we're probably going to start that the last 2 quarters of the program. So in quarter 7, you'll be starting to conceptualize your capstone, and then you'll be done with it by the end of the program by quarter 8. So one of the ways you'll be able to complete this capstone is just like a research type thesis paper, based on a selected and approved area of counseling psychology of your interest. Another way you can complete the capstone is do it via a project, right? We can give you some case studies, and you can take those case studies and apply all the theory and the diagnosis and the case conceptualization and the practical sort of application and how you would work with clients, even maybe what if this doesn't work, then what would you do, right? Those kinds of practical based projects will be allowed as a capstone as well. And some of you may already be counselors working with clients, right? You might have a practice. So you can also do this project-based capstone with your current clients, right? And take us through assessments and interventions and how you are utilizing these theories and bringing them to life and helping your actual clients that you are working with currently. And lastly, we are trying to figure out how to create a fieldwork experience for those of you who don't have clients and may want that, right? We're understanding, the area, the demographics of where you are and what the potential is to be supervised and to have a caseload and to be supervised, right? We are, we're just thinking ahead. We're thinking ideally in that sense. That's probably the one we have the least formed at this point, right? You'll get a capstone advisor and you'll be able to customize, what your chosen capstone is and work with them all throughout your experience of this. Okay, let's talk about the flow chart now. Do you want to put that up, Chris? I've been looking at my notes, so I'm going to come over and look at the flow chart. Okay, and I actually have it printed out here too. Let's see.
It's up now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the program is 36 units total. It's divided into 8 quarters, and there are 4 quarters per year, right? And it's over 2 years. So, and the program is a combination. There's going to be a lot of asynchronous work where you're working in the context of an assignment in a module, right? It doesn't mean our asynchronous term. It doesn't mean that you have the whole class or the whole quarter to finish assignments in the class, right? There'll be due dates. There'll be expectations that you're showing up and participating in discussions. You may be assigned to a group project with another student that you'll be doing. You might be presenting. You are in constant contact with the professor in this asynchronous type of program. And there's also going to be synchronous class meetings. There'll be synchronous lectures. There'll be extra content in the form of talks and conversation. As I mentioned earlier, we have a wealth of faculty, not just in our department, but beyond that. To come in and have appropriate talks related to the field of counseling psychology. So I just wanted to give you a chance to look at the courses, right? There's, let's just say the names of them, right? There's counseling principles and practices, trauma and crisis, advanced theories, career counseling, group dynamics, there's scholarly research and writing, self and human development, child and adolescent therapy. There's a working with couples class, ethics, psychopathology, career counseling, clinical documentation, addiction, assessment and testing, and meditation and mindfulness. I think I covered all of them. So be thinking about your questions about the flow chart, and we're going to come back to that or any other thing you have in this about the program. And then I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to talk about why you might choose Sophia University, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jen. So why choose Sophia University? Well, first of all, we have global partnerships and international focus. So our partnerships span continents, providing students with access to a global network and opportunities to gain practical, culturally relevant experience wherever they choose to practice. So this international perspective aligns with Sophia University's commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly in promoting global mental health and well-being. Also, Sophia University offers a flexible applied psychology curriculum. So this flexible program structure allows students to blend their studies with hands-on training in their preferred locations. The curriculum emphasizes applied counseling psychology with the practical experiences. There's the theoretical, and we combine that theoretical knowledge with practical experience to prepare students for diverse real-world challenges. So it's transferable skills to the real world you'll be learning. And sharing. I think we're all learning together and growing. Also, Sophia University offers innovative and cutting-edge learning. So Sophia's program differentiates itself by integrating the latest technology and methodologies, offering an education that adapts to the evolving landscape of counseling psychology as the field of study grows and the profession grows and as the world changes. Collaborations with leading institutions ensure that advancements in mental health are brought directly into the classroom, providing students with forward-thinking competitive edge.
Great.
You want me to say a little more about the commitment to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals?
Sure. Okay. If you know that, that'd be awesome.
That's just, yeah. So Sophia University's mission to advance mental health globally aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. By fostering a globally connected community of counseling psychologists, our program addresses mental health needs and contributes to these sustainable development by enhancing well-being, promoting social equity, and also facilitating professional mobility. I think there are some questions in the chat kind of related to that as well, as far as what's offered here and there. And anyway, I'll hand it over to you, Jen.
I realize I do have one more thing I wanted to say before we open the floor, because this may be part of your questions too, right? So Chris Wing, or another university admissions partner, right, can tell you specifically about the admissions process. But what it will include is a brief interview with both myself and Dr. Neal. We'll do it together. And, we want it to be in a space where you can tell us more about yourself and why you're interested in the program and what you hope to, get from it. What do you expect from it? And what do you want to do with this degree in your career, right? I realize some of you are already counselors and you may be wanting these tools and skills to enhance the career that you already have. Or some of you may not be in that certification or that place yet. So you're looking to start somewhere to sort of get these tools as you move forward in the career in your home country. And Adam and I put a list of questions together, and I figured, this might be a time where we can ask each other some questions, because I'm curious about you and your needs and what you want to get out of this, as you probably are curious more specifically about what we do in this program. So I'll save those and we can ask those of each other. So let's move to the Q&A part. Chris, should we do the interpretation?
Yes, I believe in the chat box there are multiple questions. So there are in English, so you can read through the questions and
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to turn the chat on. Oh, great. Okay, I'm scrolling back up. Is the master's degree eligible to meet the requirements for obtaining a license in the future? Oh, that's such a good question. And here's the answer to it. And it really is, it depends, right? So you're getting, and if you're somebody who already has a counseling, do we have anybody here who's already a counselor? Maybe that's the question I want to ask out first, right? And then we have people here who aren't counselors, right? So this would be a very good question for somebody who wants to understand how you get a license. Every license in the US is regulated by state. There is not a national license that you get and it's good across all 50 states, right? So people who come to Sophia University domestically, they get educated in a California-based school with a California-based education. And then what we do is we look ahead to the states that we can have residency in and have students attend remotely in, and we meet those states' requirements and their educational experience. But typically there are differences in units and courses. There's a few course variations, and there might also be a difference in how much field experience they're required to get in their degree and post-degree, right? So given that the fact that there's not a regulated way of obtaining a counselor certification in China right now, you would have to do field work that's equivalent to what California requires, right? So you would have to have somebody who is supervising you with a license from California in order to make that happen. So it's, and then there's residency rules. So getting a license and moving to, and maybe this isn't your question, right? But I'm just kind of leaping ahead here. Getting a license, being licensed in California and moving to California, there's a whole other sort of issue of residency to deal with as well. And Chris, I realize you may know the nuances to some of these greater questions than I do, but that's the best way I can explain that. And I hope that that helped you. As far as what's going on in China and what constitutes as a certification and how that field is or isn't operating, right? I know less about that, but I do know this degree will prepare you for whatever comes down the pike in that way. I hope I did that question justice. That was a great one. What is the difference? Oh, good. Somebody's giving me a thumbs up. Great. Okay. What is the difference between counseling psychology and transpersonal psychology? Ooh, that's a good one too. Michelle, do you want to try that one? We can co-answer any of these two.
Yeah,
You're not
sure.
alone. You're not alone.
I'll speak to it. Counseling psychology and I would say, well, you know, we have a master's of counseling psychology and we focus on transpersonal psychology as well. So there's an overlap for sure.
Yes.
And I would say counseling psychology speaks more to the licensure path or to the actual counseling practical skills applied, whereas transpersonal psychology is sort of holding that greater multidimensional whole person approach that we mentioned that we use both for education and for counseling. There's transpersonal philosophy and there's transpersonal psychology. And it kind of goes back to the question I asked earlier, what is transpersonal psychology, right? So we all might answer this differently too. And within the field of transpersonal psychology, there would be a myriad of different answers, different flavors, if you will, different spices, I guess. And the actual literal translation that I think of often is transpersonal, beyond or across the personal, right? And then psychology is the study of the psyche. So we're looking at all these different dimensions. We've mentioned creativity, somatics, so the body, we're looking at the body level, the emotional level, the mental field, and all the other dimensions that may or may not be seen. So that's the unconscious coming to conscious. I don't know if I'm answering the question about the difference. I'm talking a lot about transpersonal psychology, and I'll add that I think that is the greater whole that holds the specific practical skills of the counseling psychology. Jen, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I loved how you answered that. And I would just say, this is kind of how I explain it to domestic students. And I realize we have an opportunity to explain it to you too. And we'll see sort of how that works in translation, right? So counseling psychology to me is the traditional skills and tools, as Michelle mentioned, as most programs are held to a standard, right, of what counseling psychology is as a standard, not only in states, but across the entire field in the US, right? And so when I talk to prospective students, I kind of make the argument, why would you want to just go to a school that teaches just that, right? just learning tools and interventions. And sure, you can sit in a room and you can pair it back cognitive behavioral therapy. You can pair it back systems theories, structural therapy. But why wouldn't you want to bring your whole person self? Why wouldn't you want to look at yourself and how you influence, or how your presence in the room impacts the quality of therapy, right? So that's what transpersonal psychology is for me. And let me give you a personal example, right? I used to be a hothead in my youth. I used to get angry so quick about things, and I couldn't really emotionally regulate very well. And after graduate school, I learned so much about emotions and how emotions dysregulate. And I knew that I was going to have to get a hold of my emotions if I wanted to be an effective therapist in the room. Because if you don't do that, if you don't get a hold of your psychic material, you can harm a client with that. And we don't want to do that, right? We want to understand where we stop and where somebody else begins. That's transpersonal, right? And to understand the space in between and what happens with that. But I learned a lot of integration around anger, right? I could be angry at the same time and still be a functioning adult. I didn't have to compartmentalize and go hide somewhere or yell and scream to get my point across. And that was probably one of the most transpersonal things I have ever learned in my life. And I use that skill almost every day, right? So, we all have our own trauma. We all have our own experiences we bring, and we can get triggered in multiple ways, especially working with clients. A client may come and sit down across from you and have the exact same trauma story you have. If you don't understand how that impacts you as a professional, and if you haven't worked out how to get out of your way and how to really be present for a client, you might harm a client. And we don't want you to do that, right? So traditional counseling psychology, there's a lot of schools that are doing that. And then you have what we're doing, which is you get your traditional and so much more. Okay. I'm going to give myself 2 thumbs up for that answer. Okay. And I got a heart from Chris. That's good. Okay, I'm scrolling down. How does the MCPC program support students' growth into professional therapists through and practical coursework? Well, I feel like, we talked a lot about that during our talk, but maybe we can give some more specific examples, right? So I'm just going to use, this is what's coming up first for me, right? I'm just going to roll with that. I feel like we have a lot of role play, right? You're engaged in a lot of dyad work and a lot of role play, and you get an opportunity to practice with your fellow students, right? In classes, you'll be assigned a partner and you'll be given a different sort of assignments. I know Michelle does this a lot in counseling principles and practices. Do you want to give an example of one of the role plays that you do in that class?
Sure. Yes. Role play and a lot of other ways of learning. So there's different ways of knowing, right? And so I often ask students, like, how do you best take in information and how do you best express information, which I think is an important therapeutic tool as well. So in the counseling principles and practice course, ideally, depending on the number of students in the class, there's triads. So in the triad, each person takes a different role and you each get an opportunity to be the therapist, be the client, and be the witness. And I firmly believe that witnessing is a huge skill as part of being a therapist, right? And being a client. Like, we differentiate the roles, yet in each role, you learn more about becoming a therapist, right? So I offer students, and oftentimes students share real information, like their real life story. So it might be a role play. They might be playing out something else or someone else's story. Oftentimes it's your own content. So maybe it's, what makes you most nervous about being in this program right now? Or how do you feel about going back to the world after being in class and learning all of this and then going back out into the world? So I'll offer a prompt or something like that for the client to talk about. And then the therapist will be practicing very specific skills. Some basic skills are listening, attending or attuning, and making contact. So as we've been talking about, part of it is that interoceptive awareness, being aware of what's happening in here, and exteroceptive awareness, what's happening out there. So it's like one teacher said, one foot out there and one foot in here, one eye out there and one eye in here. And how do we develop that skill? Through practice, right? And so practicing through role play or even real life experience, this is a great way to deepen into that. And then the witness is there witnessing and giving feedback. And so in that class, you learn how to facilitate and give feedback as well. And at the end of the class, you transcribe an actual session, which I think personally has been the greatest learning for me as a therapist, because it's vulnerable, yet we also witness ourselves in the therapist role and then make the changes we might have wanted to make. So that's an example, kind of an overview of that whole class as it is right now anyway. And then in other classes, role play might be like play out, a child or person in a movie or something like that. And then you role play therapist. I also do sort of a therapist in the round. So we have a client and then we practice being the therapist. So we're all collaborating together as a group as far as offering statements. How would I make contact with this client? And we take turns at that. And then the client can tell us that landed or that didn't. And we practice in that way as a group. Yeah. So those are a couple examples.
And there's also a lot of vignettes that we do, and practice vignettes. So you'll get a vignette and you'll work with a partner, maybe more than one person, and you'll kind of like assess what's going on here. How would you start the therapy? What happens if it goes this way or that way, right? So again, there's multiple ways that we kind of like put you through the practical experience. And you're also one of the whole person learning. It has a lot to do with you're learning about how to be a therapist, and you're trying on everything that you're learning about being a therapist, right? So there's that traditional counseling versus the transpersonal. It's kind of all happening at the same time. You are being introduced to the theoretical orientation and the intervention as you're experiencing what it's like to receive that, as you're giving feedback about that, either through a paper or through your partner. So there's this constant multiple realms of things happening all at the same time. Yeah.
I think there's a parallel.
Yes. Go ahead, Michelle.
Jen, there might be a parallel here too. I see a question, the difference between the coursework for individual, couple, and group therapy. And I'm thinking as we're sharing about what a class is actually like, sometimes there's individual work, reflection, or, just individual processing of the information. And sometimes there's partner work, and sometimes there's group work, as we've mentioned. Sometimes you're leading the group. And I think that speaks to that question about the difference in the courseworks too, because in a couples course, there would be role plays with couples, right? And in group therapy, you might have a group therapy session, or you might lead a group therapy session. And then with individuals, it can just look different. So there's the multiple ways of bringing in the whole person and the system, right? I don't know if you have any more to share about that, Jen, the difference between
it's like, it's an ethical consideration. What's your unit of treatment, right? And there's a whole group theories that support working with the group, and you'll learn a lot of them, right? You'll come away with some competent skills on how to run a group, right? And how to determine who is fit to be in that group and who's not, and how to build a group from the beginning to the middle and to the end, and to shore up some of the skills that are learned, right? Group dynamics are powerful. And they can be very therapeutic, both in the facilitation of the therapist and also the peer guidance and pushing. Sometimes groups, you can get pushed up against your sharp edges. Sometimes you can feel supported. Like all of that happens in group dynamics. So that's how we talk about it in terms of that. Individual therapy can be, with kids or adults. And I do a lot of process therapy, and that's like experiential therapy in terms of systems theory with individual clients and couples and groups. I just love using experiential therapy. I like when somebody tells me that they are feeling shut down, I'll say, stand up and show me what that looks like. What does it look like to be shut down? So a client might go hide under a chair or just sort of like curl down into a ball, right? And then we can start working with that, right? And be like, what are the words that go with that? I can do that with sort of any constellation. Couples are hard. Couples are hard. My sense is that most couples want the other person to change. They don't want to do anything different. There's some breach of trust that's happened. There's some argument that they're happening that's like the same argument for 20 years. And, you know, it can get very stagnant. So I usually try to cut through that and get right to the heart of the matter. And I also like to know, like, what's working about being in the couplehood. Obviously, they're still there. What do they like about it? And that can be an interesting dissolve of the couplehood as well, right? So I don't have any couples on my caseload right now, and that's okay. I'm taking a break from couples right now. You should charge more to see couples. They're exhausting. Michelle, you only saw couples for your dissertation, right? In the heart math? Was that all couples or was that some individual clients too?
Some individual clients too.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. What did we do? Okay. Where are we? Hopefully that answered your question. I feel good about it. Do you feel good about that, Michelle? Should we move on?
Yes.
Okay. If a Master's of Transpersonal Psychology student from Sophia wants to attend your program here, can we skip some of the courses like the APA writing course? Ooh, these are good questions. So I'm going to say if you've taken a course that is very similar to another program, yes, right? I'm the chair. I get to make the rules. So I'm going to say definitely yes. And as long as it doesn't infringe on, I think there might be one or two classes that would qualify for this. The APA, the scholarly writing class, I think is what you're talking about. And we can look at that. We can look at your transcript. We can see how that played out, especially if the same professor is going to teach the one in our program. That's more sort of justification. So I'm going to say yes. And it depends. And, but I think the answer is most likely. All right. What is the difference between transpersonal psychotherapy and common psychotherapy? Okay. I think we
covered that.
We covered that. But if somebody doesn't feel like that question was answered adequately, maybe ask that question in a different way. And then we can, or these questions maybe all came in before, we started answering them. So, okay. Are there any internship or clinical hours required during the program? So the answer is, in short, no, right? We can't require that at this point. First of all, we have some people who are already counselors who are going to be in this program and they want to take this program to enhance their already existing practice, right? And we're still looking into how that works in the field with supervision, right? So it could be a possibility at some point. We are trying to work with partners, trying to figure out what we have going on the ground, trying to figure out where you might live in your country and what would be available to you. These are all questions we have as far as a potential capstone experience. And we don't want to say no. We don't want to close the book on that. Obviously, we would like you to have some experience of that. And we're going to see if we can figure it out. Oh, thank you. I heard the answer to skipping course possibility issue already. Okay, good. We got a little party emoji. I like it. Okay, so I know it's 6:04. Technically we have until 6:30. If there are no more questions, can we ask you some questions? We would love to ask you some questions. Like, I'm curious why you're interested in taking this program. That's one question, right? Chris, do we need to type that in Mandarin, or are they hearing me say that in Mandarin?
They're hearing you, yes.
Okay, great. So why are you interested in taking this program? What do you hope to do with a program like this? Like, what are your career goals? Let's just start with those two questions. And feel free to, answer that in voice or answer that in the text. And we would love to hear from you.
Can I add too, Jen, just if there's any questions we missed or anything that wasn't clear, maybe if you want to bring your voice in also, you can do that.
Oh, there we go. What is the difference between, oh, no, we already got that one. Let me scroll down. Oh, we just had a sure response. Okay. I'm going to give a thumbs up to that.
I'm just repeating the questions and then
Yeah.
translate in Chinese and then type in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's, I'm going to go back to the list I had. Has anybody ever had experience with a therapist or a counselor? And what was that like? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And then here's another one I feel is really important, right? Like, do you have any concerns about how Western concepts of psychotherapy will work for clients in China? I mean, to be honest, like, we're very transparent as professionals and program chairs and faculty. I'm concerned about that too. And I know there's such an interest in having this, but as somebody who's offering this program and overseeing this program, your welfare, right, as our students is a high priority for me. And even though I can't really fully answer that question as well as you could, along this program, students in our program will have an opportunity to give us feedback about it constantly. And that's going to be welcomed and solicited for sure.
Absolutely. I would love to hear from anyone who would like to share any of these questions. We would love to hear from you.
Okay, there's one answer.
Like,
there are two answers in the chat box.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see. It's kind of why are you interested in taking the okay, that's the question. Like when focusing on the body, telling the big wisdom. Ooh, I think I know what that means, right? Like, Michelle does a lot of work and has a lot of training in somatic psychology. What does that mean to you, Michelle, when you hear the body being correlated with big wisdom?
Oh, yes. I think, like I said, the art doesn't lie, the body doesn't lie. And so Joshua, I think that's who made this comment. I wonder if that's what you're speaking to, like the focus on the body really like attunes. If we tune in, we can get the big wisdom. The body tells the wisdom. That's certainly been my experience with clients. And sometimes it's really challenging for clients or us in certain moments to feel the body or to pay attention to the body. This inner awareness sometimes can be painful. So to get to the wisdom, sometimes we need to kind of go through the pain or around the pain and find our way in terms of meeting our clients where they are, meeting ourselves where we are. And so there's a mindfulness and attunement. It's like we are our own tuning forks to get into the big wisdom. That's how I understand this comment and my experience also with myself and with clients. Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, and I'll just say I know that in like Western culture here in the US, we grow up not really like being taught that we're connected to our bodies. and I wish I could say that, maybe differently, but that's kind of how I experience it, right? Like we're like floating heads and we think and think and think, and we think in school and we think our careers. And at some point, a lot of us hit a wall where we're just like, whoa, like, why do I have all these feelings that I don't know how to process, right? Like, why do I, and there's emotions which are separate from visceral sensations of the feelings that happen in our body, right? So learning the language of our body is essentially sort of how we approach somatic psychology. We can teach ourselves what the language of our body is. I know now what it means when I start to my stomach gets tight, when I feel like the hairs stand up on the end. I mean, I pay attention to those things. I always know I'm in the presence of a narcissist by the way that my nervous system responds. And I used to not trust that. And now I trust it completely because it's happened many, many, many times, right? So it is big wisdom and it's incredible. It's an incredible alternative way, different from traditional counseling, right? This is part of
Right.
transpersonal counseling to use somatic tools and practices like that. So thank you so
Right.
much for bringing that into the room.
Yes, thank you. And the question keeps coming up too, what theoretical approaches or what therapeutic approaches are used in the program, in the courses? And I think that might depend on the instructor. I, for example, bring in a lot of somatic psychology, somatic theory, somatic wisdom, if you will. Organicity is a term that I use a lot, and that's trusting this organic, like natural way of our bodies, or maybe another teacher would say cognitive behavioral, there's that approach. So I would say that you're going to get that broad range of theoretical and therapeutic approaches through the experiential learning that we've been talking about for the whole person. So hopefully we'll tap into all those different ways of learning and ways of doing therapy. And I see a few more questions coming in. Jen, do you want me to read the next one?
Sure.
I have learned theories about psychology and transpersonal psychology for over 12 years, and that helped me solve my personal issues a lot. Now I'm ready to do them for reaching out for people. Awesome. But it needs strong preparation.
Yeah.
Yes. So if I'm taking the counseling training enough, I think I'm confident more.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. This program sounds like it would really help prepare for that next step, like you're saying. And so we can study it, right? And then applying it. It sounds like you're ready for that next step. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
And I would say there's multiple ways of being confident, right? There's the being confident about the theory that you're using, right? But that's going to fall flat if you're not confident as a person, or if you don't understand how you impact the vibe or the energy or the experience of therapy as your client has it, right? In creating the therapeutic container, which is where the work happens. And it does take a lot of work and effort, right? It does take strong preparation. And like I said, in California, I had to get 3,000 hours before I would even be considered to take. There were 2 licensing exams at the time I did it, right? So I felt very confident when I was being supervised. And then when I was newly licensed and I no longer had supervision, I had to kind of go through a whole learning process again of being out there and beginning and starting. So I'm fairly confident now, I would say, after 23 years. But, it doesn't mean you've seen it all. It doesn't mean you've experienced it all. There are still things that come my way that are brand new. And it helps to have a consultation group so you can talk things out with each other. You can, because you get triggered sometimes and your stuff is your stuff. Your trauma is your trauma. And if I can consult with professionals about what's going on, then I can reset, get out of my way, be back in my therapeutic presence, and be the best therapist I can be for my clients. Yeah.
Agreed. Mhm.
Oh, great. Because I'm interested in becoming a licensed psychotherapist. Amazing. You have
Right.
2 right here. And I can't even, it's hard to describe what this job is and what the experience of this job has been. But every time I think about maybe I should have been a cosmetologist and been a hairstylist, right? My my hairdresser makes like $80 an hour. And that's a lot of money over time, and especially when there's multiple clients a day. Sometimes she has two people in on the same hour, right? Every time I think about what else would I be doing when I go in that full circle, I always come back to this. I get to help people. I get to sit with people and support them during their hardest times. And I'm good at that. And I get to learn about people and humanity. I have like a front row seat on the cutting edge of humanity. And that is something that is an honor to have as a person in this field, also as a teacher and an instructor. So, this field and this career is challenging in many ways, but very, very rewarding in other ways. And I feel like I'm going to be doing it until I'm old, super old, right? Because the older I get, the more people, will project onto me that I have wisdom. And that's just kind of how it works. And that's very different in our culture here in Western culture. The older you get, the more you're kind of like pushed off to the side. But if you're a therapist, you actually get a lot of wisdom projected onto you, and you can actually earn more and make a greater living even in like your 70s and 80s. So yay for us. Okay. Did you have anything else to say about that? I am scrolling.
I think we're having a question about the unique features.
Okay.
There's a couple of questions here about the unique features for the MCPC program. How does it differ from other counseling psychology programs? And I would just say, I think this transpersonal element, as we've mentioned, and how that the difference between traditional psychotherapy, counseling psychology, you will get all of that and more. I think that's how Sophia offers in their mission statement, and as a transpersonal, with a focus on transpersonal psychology, it's the self-development that is integral to being able to be the best therapist we can be, I think. And for me, it's an ethical imperative. It's an ethical issue to really be able to attune to ourselves as we attune to another person. And I think that's unique to transpersonal psychology, to Sophia University, to this program, where you will receive both the practical theoretical skills along with the application of learning how to be comfortable in your own self in order to be the best therapist and be able to be of service to our clients. That's how I would say. Jen, how would you want to add anything or?
I'm sorry. I was actually looking at the chat, and I don't think I can add anything intelligent because I wasn't tracking you. But I was just noticing how there are two students that know each other from somewhere else. And I thought
Yes,
that was sweet. So
that's awesome. Yes.
um,
We have some PhDC students here. Is that what's
I
happening?
think so.
Great.
Yes. Okay. So sorry, I got distracted by
No
hearts
problem.
and thumbs up and emojis. It's
Great.
something that
Okay.
happens.
Maybe that,
Okay.
Joshua. Thank you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, scholarships. Chris, are there scholarships available for the MCPC? Is that something that you want to
Yes, we
speak to? Okay.
yes, we will talk about it later, about the
Okay.
scholarship and how to apply for the program.
Okay.
All right. And then the last question is, what are there? By the way, thank you so much for chiming in and telling us about your motivations and your hopes and your ideals and your questions. That was great. I really appreciated that.
Me too. Thank you all.
And then, yeah, so it looks like what are the requirements to apply for the master's program? Chris just dropped down the admissions requirements. And remember, a part of that includes an interview, and Adam and I will be doing those interviews. They'll be about 20 minutes long. And we're going to, want to get a face-to-face with you on Zoom and talk to you just about your hopes and what you want to do with this degree, and a few other things. Yeah. What are the advancements of Western counseling psychology? Ooh.
Great question.
Do you want to take that one, Michelle?
Sure. I would love to take that one because I would hope it's moving into the transpersonal psychology realm, which we are talking about. That is the hope. And I do see in Western counseling psychology, even in traditional settings, more and more acceptance of creativity, somatic psychology. I feel there's a global shift, and a shift in the Western counseling psychology in particular. There have been sort of waves of development. So it started with cognitive behavioral, moving into humanistic in the 60s. There's a bit of a historical, it's not that old of a field or a profession, really. And then after the humanistic came the transpersonal. We're in the transpersonal wave, and I am so excited for your question and for the future of this field of study of counseling psychology globally. Sure, maybe Western counseling psychology. And I would hope that Western counseling psychology integrates Eastern psychology and Eastern philosophy and becomes more global. And I feel that that is what we're on the edge of here with transpersonal psychology. We've talked about what that means. I feel we're all on the edge of discovery of what's next. And I think it's an exciting time to be in this field to see how it evolves to what is next, and hopefully more integration and creativity. I think that's core to what I experience with transpersonal psychology. And it feels like there's an emergence of, what is next? And what are the advancements? What's to come? And that's exciting. And maybe you'll be part of creating that.
Oh, I love that. And it's, we have some very big things in our way as well. And I'll just, again, we're very transparent, right? We have this managed care insurance system here in our country it just seems to be getting worse and worse every year. And so some people have insurance through their work. They get medical insurance, they get mental health insurance. And more, it seems like the insurance companies are sort of squeezing out what they'll reimburse for. So access to mental health is becoming less accessible. And affordability for mental health outside of somebody who's practicing in a network, in an insurance network, is hard too, right? So there's a lot of clinicians that are advancing the field outside of insurance, but that can be very costly. And insurance is and the licensing boards are keeping us sort of like minimized in what we can and can't do and what we can practice, right? Psychedelics are popular here, and we can't have that in our field yet. And it's just not something that there needs to be evidence-based, there needs to be science, and we do have evidence-based practices here that are approved, but we have to stick to those if you want to be on an insurance panel, right? So hopefully that helps a little bit in looking at it the other way as well. Okay. There's another big question too. Why should Chinese students pursue American counseling programs if they aim to become counselors? What makes these programs advanced, and how is this reflected in the curriculum? Excellent question. And I will start by saying that we are responding to a need that we have been told China has towards having more resources and tools and theoretical orientations and training available to them to practice counseling psychology with, right? So, and I don't know exactly why, right? I don't know if it's because there's not enough practitioners over there, if there's not enough theories that encompass sort of everyone's issues in an effective way. Maybe there's less theories that are approved to practice counseling with. But my understanding is by reaching across the ocean, let's just say that, right? The Pacific Ocean, that's the biggest body of water in between me and China, right? We are helping and joining forces with you and collaborating to advance counseling psychology in a way that maybe not happening readily or everywhere in your country, right? So again, I don't know if that's the real true answer, but that's what I've heard. That's sort of an assumption I'm making. So maybe somebody else can say more about that. Maybe somebody has more experience or answers about that. Yeah. So there's a question about regarding the integration of Eastern and Western approaches, and where does the faculty come from in terms of teaching Eastern wisdom? We're going to have bilingual and Mandarin speaking faculty as well, who will understand. And so the whole curriculum is going to be vetted out, before you get it as a class. And we're going to be going through and deciphering and being very clear about, what's Eastern, what's Western, and how these things come together or how they might look different, right? There's going to be some things that translate very well, and there's going to be some things we have to work on. But it's not something that we have totally worked out yet. And again, it's one of those things where we are being told that this is something that's needed over there. So if there's something that's lost in translation or something, when you say Eastern wisdom, like that could fill up the entire city that I'm in right now, right? That is huge. There are so many things about that, nuanced things, overt things, covert things about being raised in an Eastern culture and how you're going to forge and develop a relationship to Western approaches, right? Just like we do in Western culture, and how we forge a more individualized approach to Eastern concepts as well. So again, I'm not sure how well that answered your question, but I think I did a good job of taking it on. Michelle, do you have any other wisdom to land about that?
I love how you shared. I think I'll just reiterate that this program, we are collaborating with multicultural, and there's language and there's also the culture of the program, and we want to hear from you all. And we also have experts who have been able to span the Eastern and Western wisdom traditions and approaches and can advise and consult with us. And I think also the instructors, we each have our own history of what that means to us. And again, from a collaborative approach in meeting you all as students and meeting this whole program development, we want to be sensitive and aware of a cultural collaboration in what's going to work for you all and what do we have to offer. So it's a bit of a parallel to how we run our courses, right? We show up as individuals with our histories and our content knowledge, and we also engage students to hear what is it you want to learn. And we find that balance in terms of Eastern wisdom. If we come from different cultures, we would like to hear from you. What does that mean to you? What does this terminology even mean? And how can we collaborate in the learning process? So I think that's as a program development and as in each course, I think I'd like to hold that intention as well.
Yes. And it's unfolding and it's expanding. And there's going to always be room for a collaboration and learning and transcending as we move through the program. And again, that's us being fully transparent and fully sort of acknowledging how we work and how we development and how we hold this material in our own sort of like native language and native Western schema and thought, and how we would hold that also in outside of that.
And this course is online. There's a question about the 2-year course. Will it be taught at a school or online? And it's all then.
So all of our courses will be online, and mostly asynchronous. There will be 2 or 3 classes a quarter in each class, which will be a live synchronized lecture about the course specifically with the professor. And in addition to that, we'll have special talks and lectures outside of that, right? We really kind of want to cover some of the hot topic things or engage you as students so you can sort of have a sense of all the professors who are teaching in this field and how they respond to our material. We'd also like to have like talks. So we're going to invite you to attend a talk, and there'll be a topic, and it'll be just a place where we can have the conversation unfold like this and just talk to each other, maybe even about that question, right? Where does the faculty come from in terms of teaching Eastern wisdom, right? I think that's an excellent question for a talk. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Noticing the time too.
Yes. It's 6:30, Chris.
Yes, I think this is our last question, so we can wrap up here. And then Michelle, and then Jane, do you have anything else you want to share with our students?
This has been wonderful. This has been transformative. I really appreciate you showing up and participating. And, this is the first time we've done an info meeting. So now we have an experience of that, and we were all here together. So thank you so much for being here and being interested in a program like this.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Michelle, for your sharing. So we will move to the next stage. Michael.
各位同学，上午好！感谢大家抽出宝贵的时间来参加今天索菲亚大学咨询心理学硕士项目的说明会活动。我是索菲亚大学中国代表处招生负责人 Michael。2025年，索菲亚大学迎来意义非凡的建校50周年。为了庆祝这一重要里程碑，索菲亚大学将在全年开展一系列丰富多彩的校庆活动。自1975年成立以来，索菲亚大学一直致力于超个人心理学的研究和教育，坚持全人发展的理念和实践。在此，我也想与同学们分享几个好消息。相信一部分同学们已经注意到，目前对于中国地区，索菲亚大学正在进行全面招生。硕士项目方面，分别有超个人心理学硕士、咨询心理学硕士、工商管理学硕士、计算机科学硕士项目。博士项目方面，分别有超个人心理学博士项目以及工商管理博士2个项目方向。索菲亚大学超个人心理学博士项目学制为3年，超个人心理学博士项目分为超个人心理学的研究理论及实践应用及结合为一体、独一无二的项目实践研究，为超个人心理实践者提供了独一无二的实践机会。自1975年成立超个人心理研究院以来，该博士项目承载了基于半世纪在心理学领域开创性的研究成果，全方位帮助学生在个人层面、专业领域以及社会层面进行全方位的积极转变。另一方面，索菲亚大学于2023年秋季推出了工商管理学博士项目。这个博士项目为3年的高阶学位项目，为全球企业高级管理者和商业领域的学者们提供深入研究和实际应用机会。我们 DBA 项目共拥有54个学分，当然也是结合我们超个人心理学哲学为基础，是索菲亚大学创校以来学术研究成果的浓缩。如果同学们对以上项目有任何的问题，或者说感兴趣，我们也可以联系我们中国代表处的各位老师们。除了我们新推出的工商管理学博士项目以外，我们也将在2025年的新春一起发起索菲亚大学新生推荐计划。我们也希望有更多的学生可以加入该计划，与我们共同建设索菲亚大学，分享索菲亚大学的变革性教育体验。另一方面，也欢迎更多拥有优质学术背景、管理背景的学生申请索菲亚大学工商管理学超个人心理学博士项目。 针对不同优质学生的背景的学生，索菲亚大学中国代表处的老师将协助每一位优质的学生申请不同程度的奖学金，给予学术支持。同学们如果对新生计划有任何的疑问和问题，想要咨询或者推荐的，也可以扫描屏幕中的二维码联系我们中国代表处的各位老师。中国代表处的各位老师会进行全面跟进。最后，在此和大家再分享一个好消息：索菲亚大学将于3月1日邀请索菲亚大学超个人心理学中英文项目主席朱彩芳教授、佛罗里达州持牌心理专家 Harris Fressman 教授以及全球心理健康学术会议主席 Dorothy Lucy 教授共同研讨科学与智慧的融合，拓展超个人心理学的边界，深入探讨超个人这一概念的定义，剖析现象界以及本体界的区别，并探讨科学方法是否适用于超越个人边界的体验。欢迎各位同学扫描屏幕右下方的二维码进行报名。在此，今天的活动以及全部的分享已经全部结束了。再次感谢各位同学的参与，谢谢大家。